What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the Detroit Red Wings and whether or not they're going to be making the playoffs. But before we start this video, we actually have a sponsor. So, Zach, kick it off.
So, for all your hockey card and collectible needs, be sure to check out Triple Diamond Collectibles. Don't miss their daily live breaks featuring the newest products. Purchase spots on their website or on the Facebook group. The link will be in the description to join. So, Triple Diamond, we'll have them linked below in the description section, and we're excited to be partnering up with them.
Yes, sir, we are. And let's jump right into this video. So, first and foremost, we're going to talk about, obviously, like I mentioned before, the Detroit Red Wings. Will they make the playoffs? And obviously, just kind of looking a little bit at their team, their organization, kind of their last 10 games, and also just, their team stats and whether or not, based on their remaining schedule, if this is a team that can, find a way and ease themselves into a final wild card spot for a chance at the playoffs and at the Stanley Cup. So I'm just gonna kind of jump right into it. I look at this team, and from the start of the season, I'm not really impressed with them. Their home record's really good. They've been really good at home, but on the road, they've kind of struggled. Their last 10 games haven't been very good. Actually, I'd argue their last 20 games haven't been that good. And
No,
they just
not at all.
haven't played good hockey like lately. And I think that this is a team that really honestly didn't do enough, I think, during, let's say, the offseason of this season, the start of this year, and even, let's say, at the trade deadline, to really improve their team for me to be like, you know what, I think this is a team that can make the playoffs. I know they added Patrick Kane. I'm aware of that. And obviously they brought in DeBrincat at the beginning of the season. But
Well, they made a bunch of terrible moves as well.
yeah,
They made moves. I agree with you. They made moves, but they did not make the right free agent signings, and they overpaid for a bunch of guys in the offseason. For example, JT Conver. I know he's having a decent year, but that contract is definitely not going to age well for them. They brought in Alex DeBrincat as well. Alex DeBrincat is on track to being a 30-goal scorer, and he'll probably do that perennially. But if you look at everything else, especially on their decor, like having Jeff Petrie and Justin Hall and Ben Sherratt locked up to a couple more years, like I don't know what you think, but I think that's pretty horrendous, and they're definitely going to have to take a hard look at that in the offseason, right?
Yeah, well, that's for sure. But I mean, first of all, like you mentioned, right? Sherratt's got 3 years left at 2 more years after this one at 4.75. You have Petrie, who's on a retained salary for 1 more year. You have Justin Hall. And like, it's one of those things that like they haven't played well. I mean, Petrie 19 points in 62 games, Sherratt 19 points in 66, and then you have Justin Hall, who's got 5 assists in 37. Hall's a +8, which is kind of surprising, but his underlying numbers haven't really been that good. And then you have Sherratt and Petrie, who just haven't been that great defensively. They haven't been horrible, but they haven't been great. And I think for Detroit, one of the problems is that if you look at their team, right, like if you look at their, let's say, defensive core right now, you've got Sherratt playing with Seider, and I think he's slowing him down. I don't think Seider is the right partner, or Ben Sherratt's the right partner for Moritz Seider. Then you have Simon Edvinsson, who's still young. He's only played 5 games this year. He's probably going to be their future, but he's probably not the guy they're relying on right now. He's playing with Jeff Petrie because Jake Wallman's hurt. And then you have Oli Mata and Shane Gostisbehere, who Gostisbehere is an offensive defenseman, but his defensive numbers aren't the best. And Oli Mata has never really been, let's say, the best defenseman. So you have yourself a team that doesn't really have the best decor, has a lot of guys that are aging, a lot of guys that, have underachieved and underperformed, that are making, big contracts, like you said, in the sense of Ben Sherratt and obviously Justin Hall, and their goaltending hasn't been good, right? Like they've had decent goaltending. Alex Lyons at 905, he's played a really good season. I mean, not really good season. He's had a decent season, 18 wins, 16 losses. He's been their guy.
And he wasn't supposed to be the guy. It was supposed to be Ville Husso. Well,
right.
Ville Husso, unfortunately for him, only played 19 games this year. James Reimer stepped in quite a bit. James Reimer was, expected to be the backup also at 36 years of age here. But Alex Dino was the guy who was kind of the stopgap for Florida this year. They brought him in. He's had some success, but my general consensus on Detroit is that they've come down to earth at this point in the regular season. I've always thought they were mid. They have their team with a nice first line, some good forward depth all around. Maurice Sider is basically expected to carry this old and inefficient decor, and their goaltending is is meh. So at this point in the season, people are saying, "Well, look, their last 20 games, they fell off a cliff. They're choking. They're choking out of a playoff contention." I just think they're coming down to earth here, man.
Yeah, I think they're playing a lot of hockey that is, let's say, what I think a lot of people expected them. Like at the beginning of the season, we're like, okay, we need an improvement from this team, and they've played well. But I think a lot of their problem with Detroit was they were one of the best power play and penalty killing teams in the league, and they're 11th in the NHL on power play percentage. Like if you look at it from their power play percentage, they're 22.8. They're 11th in the league on power play percentage, and if you look at their PK right now, they're 14th in the league in PK percentage. A lot of that had to do with their beginning of their season, right? Like they
Yeah,
were the top 5 on both categories. They were scoring on the power play, I think at like an abnormal rate at one point. Like I think they were scoring every game like 2 or 3 power play goals. It was not normal. But that's the thing, is because they haven't been able to play a good 5-on-5 game all season. And that's one of the biggest problems that I've had with Detroit, is that this is a team that relied a lot on their special teams. And yes, in a playoff situation, for sure you got to rely on your special teams. Nobody's saying no, but you have to also be good 5-on-5, because a lot of hockey is played 5-on-5. And if you cannot play 5-on-5 hockey, you're going to struggle. And so I think for Detroit, like what you've kind of said to your point is, they're struggling, but this is kind of what I think everyone expected them to be, which is an improvement, yes, but they're not as good as I think people maybe expected from them, or maybe thought, or maybe the way they played at the beginning of the season. It was kind of as if like it was not a fluke, but they weren't they kind of overachieved at the beginning of the year, and they've kind of fallen back down to earth. Yeah, Patrick Kane's played well. The Brinkats had rough moments, and I mean, look, he's got 57 points in 71 games, but I think I read somewhere that I believe in his last 15 games, he has 3 points, which is just not good enough, like flat out, right? And then you have
yeah,
Dylan Larkin who missed time, so it hurts. It hurts.
yeah. It look, they have you can't afford to have your stars on a downer at this point of the season. It's not gonna do any favors for anyone here. And like
No.
to your point, like this is a team. They I'll give you the figure to start the year. Maybe for the first 20 games or so, their power play was around the 20 to 22% mark. That was abnormal. You're
Yeah.
basically saying, on average, you're getting 4 power plays a game. Let's say it how it is,
Right.
and or if you get 5 per game, you're at least going to convert one every game, and that's a big boost for a team. And if your penalty kill is efficient, then so be it. That's just a testament to good coaching here. But
Yeah.
now with the situation that they're in, is that they have no choice but to finish the season really strong. And I think there's an organizational pressure as well, based on the fact that the last time they were in the postseason was in 2016. So their drought is the second longest right now out of running NHL teams. I know everybody talks about Ottawa's constant rebuild since their playoff magic in 2017, and that's the last time they made it. And then there's Buffalo, who haven't made it in a longer time than Detroit. But Detroit is, and especially Steve Yzerman, I think they should be under a lot of feel a lot of pressure here, and especially considering
Absolutely.
a team like the Capitals, who we'll get to in a moment, who are a team that they're competing with for this final spot. They're actually playing tonight as we speak. A team like the Capitals, they're a team who started off as strong probably as Detroit, and nobody wanted to believe that they were a good hockey team. They were 28th in scoring at one point, and they had a dozen more wins and losses. It just things weren't adding up. They were getting very good goaltending by Lindgren, but now they're in a situation here where they're playing better hockey than Detroit, and they caught fire at the right time. And Ovi has been scoring, and things have been good on that front. So it's going to be interesting to see if Detroit could close the gap. My prediction is I don't think they will. Honestly, they haven't shown great hockey recently, and I don't see anything changing because I don't believe in the group here.
Yeah, that, and also one thing that I want to talk about is actually their upcoming schedule, because that plays a factor obviously when it comes to seeing if they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, they have two big games against the Capitals, which is going to be, I think, a big determining factor as to whether or not they're going to be able to do this. But then it gets tougher. Like, you play Washington twice during your 11 game stretch. You play Carolina, Florida, Tampa, and the Rangers. Those are all teams that are comfortably in a playoff spot and are probably Stanley Cup contenders, right? So you have 4 games back to back, pretty much, right? One after another against playoff teams. So that's going to really show over the next, let's say, 5 games between Washington to the Rangers, whether or not Detroit's going to be able to do this. And if they don't get out of that sequence of games, at least 4-1 or 3-2, they're going to be in trouble, right? And then you have Buffalo, who's still out of it, but at the same time, like, they can still catch up, and then you play Washington again. So Detroit's next 7 games pretty much are gonna be the biggest games of their season, and they probably have one of the toughest schedules I think I've seen of any of the playoff teams available. And you have to play Washington twice, so it's not looking promising for these guys, especially with how bad they've played, considering the fact that they're 3-7 and they don't have the best road record either, which doesn't help because they're on a 4-game road trip right now. It's going to be tough. I don't know. I look at this team, like, Lucas Raymond's had a good season. DeBrincat's been mid lately, but he started off strong. Patrick Kane's always been Patrick Kane. I mean, 39 points in 40 games. There's not really much more you can ask for from him. And obviously Dylan Larkin's back, but he dealt with injuries. Look, they're not a bad offensive core. I think they're not where they want to be, and I think that they didn't really build their team to necessarily. I think they're missing a couple of pieces, but I think for being compared to where they were at, let's say, a couple of years ago, I think they're a lot closer to the playoffs than people give them credit. My issue with them is their goaltending, and I think it's their defense. Like, this is a team we know Detroit can score, right? If you look at their team, I mean, they have 3 guys over 20 goals and they have a bunch of guys over 10 and a few guys over 15, right? So this is a team that clearly can put the puck in the net. The problem is that they can't keep the puck out of it. And you need to have goaltending that's going to be able to steal some games. And Alex Lyon, yeah, he's got 2 shutouts. And yes, James Reimer has 2 shutouts as well. But they haven't really been spectacular. They're lower than league average in terms of save percentage, because I believe the save percentage league average is 910. They're under that. They're at 907 and 905. And they haven't played well lately. So you're looking at Detroit, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I know Detroit fans are probably optimistic, saying they could do it, but I look at their schedule and I just look at the teams that are chasing them. I look at the fact that they're chasing Washington and they already have a game more than Washington. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. Yes, they're the only team that has a positive goal differential, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that at the beginning of the season they were winning games and outscoring their opponents a lot. And lately they just haven't been doing that. So I'm not confident. I'm in the same boat as you. I don't think Detroit does it. And I'm only saying that based on their schedule. I think if they would have played better down the stretch, I think if that last 10 record would have been like 6-4, we probably would be having a different conversation. But the fact that they've struggled over the last 20 games, it doesn't give me a positive sign. And I think they're just going to miss out.
Yeah, so I think that's what's frustrating, right, for Detroit fans, is that they were in such a good position in January and then even going into February.
Right.
And it was almost like a lot of people would have said they would have been a lock to make the playoffs, because even if they were a team that for every 10 games were winning 6 or winning 5, they to this day they would have been on par with a team like Tampa, and they could have even had a top 3 divisional spot. But it goes to the fact that the way this team is built and the way they could score goals, yes, but once they go dry, they don't have another recipe of success because they can't keep pucks out of their own net. I'll drop some stats here. Right now, they're 8th in the league in scoring. They average 3.4 goals per game, but they concede an average of 3.3 goals per game, which is 24th in the league. So
Right.
this is not a recipe for long-term success.
Nope.
They're gonna have to shut things down and play better defensively, and definitely get much better goaltending. They're gonna need one of their goaltenders to step up and be a hero for them for these last dozen games that there are in the season here. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Washington, and we'll use Washington as an example because they're the team to chase right now, especially in the playoffs. 7-3-0, they've been great, but look at their goals against 221, and if you look at the way Charlie Lindgren's played, and even I know Darcy Kemper hasn't really had the best season, but Charlie Lindgren, like he's single-handedly stealing games for Washington right now, and that's
It
what you
has
need
been
at this
all
time of
year.
the season, right? And that's what you need from your goaltending is teams that make the playoffs always get solid elite at least goaltending performances during periods of the season. I'm not saying the whole season, but teams that make the playoffs usually get hot goaltending. And Detroit hasn't really had that all season. They've had okay goaltending. They've had goaltending that's been good on some days and bad on some other nights, but they haven't had a game where you're like, oh my God, this guy stole the game, right? I think maybe Alex Lyon did it once this season, and I think Reimer did it once this season, but that's about it. Right. And with
Yeah.
Washington, it feels like there's just a feel good story about them where it's like every game they play, you're like, oh my God, they're in it. Oh my God, they're gonna win. Oh wow, Charlie Lindgren made 35 saves and they won 3-2. And yes, I know that that's not necessarily a recipe for success all the time, but when you have a good goaltender and when you have a goalie that's standing on his head, it wins you a lot more games than you'd expect, right? And with Detroit, they haven't necessarily had that. So looking at their schedule, I mean, if they can steal one against Florida or Tampa, or even just win both their games against Washington, which is already a tough task in itself, and their goaltending can stand on their head, then yeah, of course they have a chance. But if their goaltending plays, the average, even just a little bit as average, I don't think it's going to be good enough. And so I think that they're going to have to find a way here to regroup as a team and kind of start playing better lately because their last game, I think they won what 1-0. If I'm not mistaken, I think I can actually
It was
check that
against
they won.
the
Right, they
Nashville
lost
game.
1-0. Right, but like if you look at their previous 5 games, 4-1 win. Right, James Reimer's in nets. Then they go lose 6-3 to Pittsburgh in a game they probably should have won. They go beat Columbus 4-3 in overtime. They beat the Islanders 6-3. So you're like, okay, 3 out of their last 4 they've played well, and then they get shut out to the Predators who have played well. So it's like you're winning games, by a high score. Look, they scored 6 goals, 4 goals, but still, in their three games before Nashville, 3 goals against, 3 goals against, 3 goals against, right? And then they get shut out 1-0. Fine, whatever. That's the game that they got goal lead. But those are the games you have to win, right? So
Yeah.
you're still, even though you're winning, let's say the games, you're still allowing 3 goals. So what you're essentially trying to say is you have to score 4 goals to win a game. And yes, scoring 4 goals in the NHL is not necessarily the toughest thing to do. But during the end of the season, a lot of teams play a lot tighter defensively. So sometimes games end 3-2, 4-3, 3-2, 2-1, games like that, right? So it's a lot tougher to play every single game and be like, I have to score 6 goals or 4 goals in order to win. It's like, no, you need to tighten up a little bit more defensively, and you need to find ways to make sure that your goaltender is going to be able to steal 1 or 2 games between now and the end of the season. And I just don't think Detroit's going to do it. And I'm looking like, to me, I look at the schedule and I'm like, there's no way they're going to do it. I don't see how they beat Washington twice and then beat Carolina, Florida, Tampa, or Rangers, or even win 3 out of those 5 games. I just don't see it. Carolina is one of the hottest
That's your
teams in the league right
prediction.
now. The Rangers are one of the hottest teams in the league right now. Like, it's not happening. I
So
just
that's your
don't see it.
prediction. They're not. So you're saying they're not going to make the playoffs.
I think they're going to miss out. I think they're going to miss out by maybe 3-4 points, but I think they're going to miss out. I think there are other teams below them and even, well, obviously, and Washington above them that I think are gonna probably battle it out. Detroit's still in the mix, yes, but I think they're gonna miss out by 3 or 4 points. I think they're gonna falter over the next 7 games, and then maybe their last 4, maybe win 3 out of their last 4, and you're like, oh my God, they just missed out. But yeah, I think they're gonna miss out by like 4 points if they do. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be playing terrible hockey, but like to add on to what you said before we wrap things up here is that
Right.
this is tight hockey. It's more tight defensively than it is, at an earlier point in the regular season, and it's about which team makes the most mistakes. It's just a Detroit have put themselves in a position now, especially like you said it with the schedule coming up. They're gonna have to almost be perfect to be able to qualify for the playoffs. And I don't think the 1 point gap between them and the Caps is gonna shrink from now till then. I actually think they'll fall out by a couple of more points, and I think by the I think by the 80 game mark, they won't even have a chance going into the last two games. So that
Okay.
was yeah. So those are our predictions. Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel, drop a like, follow us on our social medias. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc. So this is Zach and Luca.
And Luca,
We're
and
signing out.
we're signing out. Peace, boys
Peace,
and
guys.
girls. Bye bye.